and I got a bounty for it, like a 1K bounty. It was my first bug, first bounty, so I was like, oh, it's easy, you know? I found with time that showing impact will result in better bounties. And also better bounties means higher impact. While still working full-time, I decided to apply as a triager at HackerOne. Unfortunately, I got the job. I think I'm always good technically, but OAuth gave me that mindset, like that hacker mindset that I did not have. Sometimes, like you won't get any error messages, but you'll see that the application reacts differently depending on your input.
Hello, JR0ch. Thank you so much for joining me today for the podcast. For those listeners who don't know you yet, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So my name is Jasmin Landry. It's a French-Canadian name. I'm known as JR0ch17 on internet. Currently a full-time bug bounty hunter, but I started my career in IT in 2012, so almost 15 years now.
Yeah, that's a lot.
My first couple of years in my career, I worked as a system administrator. So I worked a lot with Linux, networking for like routing and switching using like products like Cisco, Windows as well, Windows servers. I did a lot of certifications as well. I was certified with Cisco, Microsoft, so VMware as well, which was big 10 years ago, not as much now. And I did that for like roughly 4 or 5 years. And after a while, I wouldn't say bored, but I wanted more challenges. I wanted like something more challenging. And security was always something that I was interested in. At school, I had classes on security, but it was like really like basics. And I wanted to, I guess, work in security, but I wanted to do more than just basic stuff. So, and obviously, hacking or pen testing was something that I always wanted to do. When I learned that we could do it as a job, I was like, I want to do that one day. It's my career goal.
Yeah, I think all our histories were like this.
Yes, that's true. So I worked my way to get there. So while I was working full-time as sysadmin, I spent my evenings learning, reading as much as I could. I read many books on hacking, and did a few certifications such as OAuth, which to me was like the game changer personally. I think I'm always good technically, but OAuth gave me that mindset, like that hacker mindset that I did not have.
Yeah.
Because as a regular person, you would just do what the app tells you to do. But the OAuth helped me get the hacker mindset of like, can I do something else that I should not be able to do?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I did the OAuth. And then after roughly 6 months after, I got my first job in information security or cybersecurity. I did stuff that were considered junior, but I got my foot in. So I was like, okay, now I can like focus on.
Was it more towards the networking since you've already had the experience with this?
It did help, like landing a job in security, but I also did like it. But I found it that it was not a passion. While cybersecurity, it was more of a passion. Like I remember, like while I was studying, I had to like, okay, go to bed. It's late. While with networking, while I was studying networking, I did not have that passion.
Yeah, I see.
It was fun, but not like cybersecurity or hacking in general. So, and I got my job. I had colleagues who were pen testers. I was not yet. I was just like a junior analyst. I did help them on some like automation tasks, or not automation, but like running Nessus scans and stuff like that. And around that time, one of my colleagues did a bit of bug bounty. He wasn't really good, but he was talking to me about it. It's like, oh, you should try it.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'll try it. So I registered on both BugCrowd and HackerOne. Tried, did not really succeed. So
what year was that?
2017.
2017.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did find one bug, which was like luck, on Microsoft application. I just put in like a payload, and months later, I noticed that it worked. It was like a reflected XXS.
Yeah.
and I got a bounty for it, like a 1K bounty. It was my first bug, first bounty. So I was like, oh, it's easy, you know?
You learned it's not a scam as well.
Yeah. So this was like in February 2017.
Yeah.
So I literally got my first job, I think, in January, so a month earlier. So I started doing bug bounty 1 month later. And then for the next couple of months, no bugs, no bounties, absolutely nothing. So I was like, okay, I need to take a step back, improve my skills and more knowledge on the topics. So I did continue learning. I remember having the HackerOne activity page open on my browser every day. So every day I looked at what was reported, what was disclosed, read it. I looked at Twitter back then, X now, what people were talking about, where there were, maybe they were disclosing bugs or making public their research or write-ups. So I read a lot. I read some more books on web application.
Do you remember the names of the books?
Yes, it was Web Application Hacker's Handbook.
Yeah, that's
I think I read that
Bible.
one. The 900-page book. Yeah,
it's a big one.
I think I read that one twice actually. Because I think the first time I read it was like, okay, I understand. The second time I was like, okay, now I get it. You know, when you have like that, okay, I get it now. It's this is the thing just like the time when you think you're ready. So fast forward from February to August. In August, I found my second bounty, another XXEs. This one was a bit more complicated, so I was happy that I was the first one on it because I put in the effort. So if it would have been a dupe, I probably would have been like discouraged, Yeah. So I was the first one on, got a bounty, and then the month after, started finding more bugs, and I was not really, I wouldn't say like a good bug bounty hunter, but I started finding stuff, had some dupes, obviously. So I was like getting confidence, but I still felt like I was not where I wanted to be. I feel like I could improve myself even more if I had the chance to like learn more.
Yeah.
So while still working full time, I decided to apply as a triager at HackerOne. Unfortunately, I got the job. So back then, I think this was December 2017. I worked at HackerOne as a triager for about a year, working 10 to 15 hours a week on top of my full time.
Oh, so it was like a part time?
Yeah, part time.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So by triaging reports, I learned that HackerOne does get a lot of reports, not always good. Some really good, a lot of bad. We all know that. But I was able to, I guess, learn. I would say like learn how others work, because when we write a report, we don't always write like how we got to that point. We just explain the bug.
Yeah.
But it still showed me like, okay, I didn't know like, I don't know, post method existed. So now I knew that existed, that it was runnable in some cases. So I was able to look into it, learn more about it, and in the end exploit it. So after a year of triaging, obviously it's a job that's not easy. So I figured, okay, I want to spend those 10, 15 hours of triaging and do hunting instead. So I started doing a bit more bug bounty in 2018. Had a good year. While still having a full-time job. So I probably did like 20 hours a week. Back then, I was like in my early mid-20s, had lots of energy, and I was able to hack on late evenings. So I had a good year. I had met Jobert, founder of HackerOne, and Peter Jaworski, who worked at Shopify back then. So I had attended my first LHE live hacking event with Shopify. It was actually in Montreal, ironically. Oh. Yeah. So I got my first LHE experience over there. I remember finding a few bugs, but they were all closed as, I think, informative. Because Shopify is not an easy target.
Yeah.
Especially as a beginner, it'll be even harder. But again, I learned a lot while working with others, collaborating with other people. The show and tell obviously was insane. I remember those bugs.
How much you can learn.
The show and tells are like critical to it was critical to my learning anyways.
Yeah.
And then, with time, got invited to more lychees and stuff. And while I was working at HackerOne, obviously had access to a lot of programs, right? So like when I was not able to hack on those programs, because obviously you would be cheating. So I hacked a lot on Bugcrowd my first couple of years. Made my way in the top, I think 40 at one point, all time on Bugcrowd. And then switched to HackerOne because I think they were doing a bit more events, and my friends were attending a lot of them. So I figured I want to attend those too, right? So I did of live hacking events, bug bounty, part time as well. And then a couple of years ago, during the COVID, I was a bit tired of my job. I wouldn't say tired, but like I eventually scaled up. I was not a junior analyst. I became a pen tester, a senior pen tester, as a matter of fact. So I was hacking 40 hours a week, and then doing bug bounty 20 hours roughly a week.
Yeah.
So it was a lot.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, my brain is tired. So I took another job which was not related to pen testing, just like an AppSec job as a consultant for like a 6-month contract. So okay, I could like calm down my hacking stuff, like take a breather, and then still do bug bounty. But like after a while, when I did pen testing 40 hours and bug bounty on the evenings, I was like, wasn't motivated. So I wanted like that motivation back, because I was really enjoying doing bug bounty like in the past few years. So I took that job, did it for 6 months, and then after the contract, I was like, okay, should I do bug bounty full time? Should I take another job? I was really debating. And it was roughly a year after I had my son. And as a father, like doing bug bounty full time is a risk, because we all know that it's not like stable income, it's, we don't decide when we get paid. Well, with a regular job, you get paid every 2 weeks, no matter what. So okay, I won't take the risk, but it was in my mind, So I took a job in a startup in Montreal as head of IT and security. So I was leading the whole IT department and security department, and the department was me. I was alone. I was the very first employee in security over there in IT. So it was a startup that was founded like 10 years earlier. So it was like a SaaS
long start.
Yeah, it was like a SaaS product, which had barely any security. So even the employee side of things, like there were no like basic stuff like antivirus on their laptops and EDR. There's nothing. Yeah. So I was like, okay, this is not what I was thinking of doing, but like the challenge is so interesting that I think I'll take the job. So I took the job, and eventually hired more people. Eventually put in like the basics in place, just to get like the regular, like a regular company would have as security products or whatnot. And then a year later, we got acquired by NASDAQ, which was quite interesting, because I learned that the acquisition would not have happened because of my work. If it had happened like a year earlier, security would have been like a NEF on the audit for due diligence. But when NASDAQ did the audit on the startup, we got an A+ on security. So like, man, this is really cool. That so I felt like really cool. Good, like even when you had like the meeting internally where the founders were like saying that, well, we're going to get inquired by NASDAQ, I got a shout out saying, look, well, you can thank Jasmin, because without him, this wouldn't be happening. Yeah. So that was pretty cool. And then while joining NASDAQ, with the title that I had at the previous company, with the work that I was doing, I got hired as a senior director at NASDAQ in information security. Yeah. So obviously NASDAQ was way bigger than what I was doing. They had lots more departments, a lot more people in security. So I stayed at NASDAQ for roughly 2 years. And then, again, still doing bug bounty as a hobby, part-time. Now as a family, I could even do less bug bounty, but still did like maybe 10 hours a week on average, sometimes more, sometimes less. And then, back in Vegas this past summer, for the Life Hacker One event, Life Hacking event with HackerOne, I took 2 weeks off to just focus on the event itself. So I was like, okay, let me just like take some time for myself and hack, just have fun.
Yeah.
And I had a ton of my life. I really enjoyed it. So I was like, okay, should I leave NASDAQ to do bug bounty full time? I was like, I'll think about it. And this is like in August, right? The live hacking in Vegas. In September, I give my resignation. So I was like, okay, man, I think it's time. I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
So so I left NASDAQ in end of September. So the first week of October, I was full-time bug bounty. Obviously, I took some time off for myself. So 2024 the rest of 2024 was a bit quiet. Did a bit of hacking, did a bit like recon building just to get like some, I guess, passive income going. Because I am like a deep dive hacker, so recon's like not my thing at all.
Yeah.
So I did a bit of building, bit of hacking, a bit of HackerOne pen testing as well, just to like get back into it. And then starting in 2025, I really been doing like a full-time hunting, and it's been going really well.
Yeah, I saw your HackerOne profile.
Yeah, so
it's been really well.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I'm happy about that decision.
Yeah.
I get to work. Well, work for me, it's not work. I'm just having fun hacking, But I do work a lot less than I did.
Yeah.
I've been playing. Well, obviously, as a Canadian, I play hockey, so I've been playing hockey a lot more. Even during like the work days. I've been playing golf a lot more as well. Golf is also another passion that I've been building in the past year or so. So in the end, I work less and make more money and have like more like free time for myself.
Yeah, that's great.
For my family. So my son goes to school now. So let's say he has a day off of school. Well, it's not a panic at home. I can just stay with him, and we can go out. We can go to the park. We can do anything we want.
Yeah, that's
it's awesome. Not a big, so if I need to take some time off, I just take it. I don't need to like ask for approval or whatnot. So I find that it's a lot less stress, even though we don't get a stable income. But in the end, the income is bigger, right? With bug bounty. Well, for me personally. So I really less stressed, and I've been really enjoying it. So I don't regret it one bit. Yeah, unfortunately for NASDAQ, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great because also there's a thing that, because obviously a podcast about bug bounty is podcast about making money, but I really like these beats where somebody says something about the work-life balance, spending time with the family, because I think this, at the end of the day, this is more important in your life than additional $2,000, additional $5,000-$10,000, and it's just invaluable.
It is,
and the time we'll never get back. So so I'm really happy to. I sometimes I try to sort of smuggle in the podcast like this, but it's really hard. So I'm really glad to hear this from you.
Yeah, and like stuff like really basic, like taking naps.
Yeah,
like with a full-time job, 9 to 5, you can't really take naps.
Yeah,
and like when I feel tired, I'll take a 1 hour nap. I'm getting old, so I have to rest because I feel like sleep is really something that I lacked the past couple of years because working full time, doing bug bounty on evenings once in a while. So I feel like I need to catch up a bit.
Yeah,
I think maybe it's the why I have a few white hairs in my beard now. Maybe I lack of sleep, so I'm trying to really work on my health. Work-life balance, make sure like I'm really happy and healthy, and for now I think bug bounty is perfect for me right now.
It is. So you've mentioned a few different ways of learning. You've mentioned books, you've mentioned just hunting, you've been employed as a pen tester, you've mentioned some certificates.
Right.
Which of these things, these methods of learning, you would say are the most efficient in context of strictly bug bounty?
I think it's really having your deep diving and working with it. I'm like a learner where having someone teach me I won't learn as much as reading. For some reason, when I read, I learn faster and easier. But having really testing stuff, I think is the way to go.
Yeah.
Well, along with reading, for example, at one point you will get stuck on something, so you will have to look it up, which is equivalent to reading in the end.
Yeah.
So that's how I work in terms of learning. Let's say I want to learn something new, I will try to do it or whatever it is manually, and then read a bit on it and go back to it, and so for me personally, that's my way of learning.
I see. And I think it's easy to get lost in different methods because they are very satisfying. Getting a certificate, having a task done is very satisfying. But I think just getting your hands dirty, it's the thing.
I think so too. Yeah, for sure.
So as mentioned, I saw your HackerOne profile recently. It looks really good with a reputation of, with an impact of over 37 in the last 90 days, which is huge. It basically means you have only crits.
Almost.
So what's the secret? What happens recently?
I don't know. I remember like setting a goal for myself. I think for a long time. Well, if you look at my overall impact all time, it used to be like around 20 something. I was like, I want to increase that. You know, because it's always fun. Yeah. So I think now my impact, what is it all time? 25.95 all time.
That's good.
It used to be like 20-ish. So like I want to increase that to 25. So like my average would be like equivalent of a high.
Yeah.
So in the past year or so, I focused mainly on highs and crits. If I found a low, I would try to chain it with something else instead of reporting it as is. Same thing for mediums. I did submit a few mediums, but I think mostly highs and crits. And even like for mediums, let's say reflected XSS, I don't think I reported one XSS which was medium. I've always increased it to high, and even some cases critical.
Yeah, by basically taking over the account.
Yes, exactly. And I found like I won't say it's a new technique, but like it's just thinking of how to use the XSS to show impact. So I won't say I've submitted only XSS, obviously not. I actually barely any XSS, maybe like 10 maximum throughout the year. But I did focus on highs and criticals, and I did focus on how to maybe better show impact. For example, again, XSS as an example, I used to just do like an alert.
Yeah.
But I found with time that showing impact will result in better bounties. And also better bounties means higher impact.
Yeah.
So in the end, showing impact on all of my reports, showing, I would say like, focusing on certain stuff, because I focus on everything, but lots of server-side issues, and I try to chain issues, show impact, look for stuff that is a bit hidden.
Yeah.
And in the end, well, I reported lots of bugs that were high and critical, which increased my impact.
Yeah.
And now it's just like a habit. So let's say in the past 90 days, like saying it's 37, but now it's like the way I work. I look for stuff that everybody looks for, I think, but I try to, show impact a bit more than I used to.
Yeah. So what are your most commonly reported bug classes?
Probably SSRF. As you guys saw or not yet, I reported an interesting one.
We published it on YouTube 2 weeks ago, the write-up we did together. So if you haven't watched it, make sure you do, because it's an amazing SSRF with a huge impact, and it's also some techniques of both the exploitation and detection that are probably universal across more targets. So definitely worth to watch that.
So yes, sorry for sure. One of my go-to one of the bug classes I like to look for personally on all kind of applications, but I will not ignore other stuff like either server side or client side, whether it's XSS or CSRF, path traversal, both client and server side, SQL injection, XXE. I'll look for everything.
Yeah,
depending on what I see, I'll look at it. But I tend to find more server side stuff. My client side skills are limited a bit, so I will rarely find anything related to the DOM, like DOM XSS. I probably won't even look for it.
Yeah.
But I use like the JavaScript to like find endpoints to look for server side stuff, for example.
Yeah.
So I tend to find more server side bugs, a bit client side. So yeah, a bit of a generalist, I'd say.
Yeah. When I was preparing for the interview, I saw a big variety of different bugs you report, and also bugs that I ignore and I never look for them, and so that's why I wanted to interview. For example, server-side template injection.
Right.
It's because for me the problem of it is that in theory it can be everywhere. So I don't know, and I don't like putting the payloads everywhere if I don't have some clue that the bug can be there. So what is your approach? Do you just have the SSTI payloads everywhere, or do you look for some kind of clues that it can be there?
A mix of both. So I used to be like you, where I would not necessarily put payloads everywhere. At one point I was like working on an app. I had found absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And at one point I put my payload everywhere, and eventually it worked. I was like, okay, maybe I should put it everywhere. So I started doing that.
But sorry to interrupt. Which SSTI payload do you put? Do you have like a polyglot for all languages?
Not really. It depends on the app. Because certain applications, depending on the language that is used, the template engine will have its own syntax.
Yeah.
So let's say Python template engine will be different than Java, from PHP, Ruby. It's all different. So I try to focus on what could be used in the backend.
Yeah.
For client side, I do have like more of a polyglot because I have like a AngularJS view which has a similar syntax in terms of templates. But for server side, I try to be more specific.
Yeah.
Also to bypass the OAuth, because a lot of cases they'll block like curly brackets and whatnot. So if you're a bit more specific, sometimes you can work around and bypassing the OAuth. Just my technique now. Specific, but I've put it everywhere because I've had cases where it worked and I was not expecting it.
Does everything also mean like a default headers, like user agent, like, I don't know, host header, or is it just inputs?
Just inputs, yeah. Maybe you should try headers. So you're bringing a good point, but just inputs. Yeah,
for me, I don't know. I feel stupid for not testing so many things, but
one thing I noticed is a lot of applications, the way they're built these days is your input is like on the application, but it will be brought elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes those elsewhere will be vulnerable. So your payload may trigger on that one.
Yeah, so like a second order injection in this case, I guess?
Yeah, kind of. I had a few cases like that with Ansible, where I put in my payload like in my email address, and it eventually worked like in a totally different application. I put in my payload like I think 7x7, like the typical test thing. And then my email address, it was like JR0ch plus 49. I was like, wow. And it was like totally different code, different everything. It's like, okay, something's happening on the way there or over there, right? So I've been just trying to put it everywhere if I can, because you never know where your input will end up.
Yeah. Do you have some kind of, I don't know, a word list that you always put in the payloads? Do you manually type it into each input? What's how exactly do you do it?
Just like a match and replace rule.
Okay.
So I have like let's say I would put SSTI, and in the payload it would be like my polyglot for client side, or another keyword for server side stuff. I use lots of match and replace rules just to bypass like client side restrictions and whatnot.
Yeah, that's super nice. I never thought about this. I use Espanso. It's called.
Okay, right.
But I don't use it enough, I think. And it does not always work, especially if you have some kind of weird input or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
So that's I'm definitely going to use this from now on.
Awesome.
The back class I never find because I never test for it. SQL injection.
Yeah.
I saw a Twitter picture from last year, from 2024. You had some. So it's still around.
I found 4 more in 2025.
Yes.
So yes,
it
still exists for sure. I think like in the end, for SQL injection, even if you have your database like in AWS, like I forgot the name, but anyways, or like in Azure, it's still in the end the code that is vulnerable.
Yeah.
So the developers still code vulnerable code. Well, you'll still find some. And so the ones that I found this year were really simple. Like I just added like a single quote and see how it reacted. it gave me an error message showing that it's probably vulnerable. And indeed it was, and it's nothing that's really complicated. Like sometimes they are complicated, but the ones that I found in this year 2025, it's just like single quote, send it to SQL map, and the rest is done. So it's literally minutes of testing, and
I think the exploitation part is the more doable one. I think the more difficult one is to detect it.
So I have a few methods of like testing, but something that is hard is identifying the database that is used. Sometimes like you won't get any error messages, but you'll see that the application reacts differently depending on your input. So that is usually hard to identify. Some cases, like the application is built on Ruby on Rails, a lot of times it works best with Postgres, so you can kind of guess that it's Postgres. For PHP, it'll probably be MySQL, but you never know, right? It can be anything. Same thing for like apps built on C# or Microsoft products. It will most likely be MS SQL. But again, you never know. It can be anything, right? So this is usually something that is quite hard. I kind of had a technique. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it does, for identifying what is used in the backend. And it's really simple. Just looking at like job applications or job offers. Sometimes they list like, we're looking for a database administrator. This is what we're using. So they use that. So maybe that's what's used in the backend. So sometimes that's just a simple technique that can work. So yeah, they still exist in 2025.
Yeah, I saw in one of your, I think it was an article on Backcrowd, that sometimes for recon you browse job applications, and I was like, what information do you find in job applications? And that makes sense.
Yes, I find that it's interesting because when you look at an application itself, you'll see like language, like with plugins like Rapali is built with, and with error messages, you can see a bit what's used in the backend, but it won't go in detail as much as like a job application. I find that some companies have started like hiding that a bit, but some others, like they'll show like, Elasticsearch, MongoDB, like they show everything what the developers need to know. And this is a good indicator of what is potentially used in the background around that product. Like I said, like your input can go from like one app to the other. Like let's say it can go from the app to Elasticsearch, or maybe your data is stored in MongoDB, and then a job fetches the data from MongoDB and puts it in an admin dashboard. Like you never know, right? So knowing what is used in the product or around, I think it's a good indicator, or not an indicator, but like it helps in terms of recon for me personally, of what it could test for.
Also, one thing I saw in one of the interview in the same blog post Backcrowd was that you think what infrastructure as a code tools are used. And my question is, first, how do you even determine this? And the second is, if you know what tools are used, how do you use this information?
So this is like really context dependent. When I wrote that article with Background, it's because I recently found an SSTI with Terraform where my input landed in a Terraform file. So Terraform evaluated my input.
That's a very specific functionality, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. And in the end, I could see that it evaluated it because it rendered it back to the application. And with testing, at the time, I had no idea it was Terraform. So I knew something was happening, but not sure what. So with testing and all, I figured, okay, maybe it's at Terraform, because I worked with that in the past while I was working in AppSec. I was like, is it that? So I tested it, and indeed it was.
Was it some kind of functionality was it like testing a cloud provider which allowed you to deploy some hosts, something like this?
Yes. So not a cloud provider, but you could deploy like products, like you could deploy like WordPress and stuff like that. So context dependent. So you probably won't see that like in regular applications. But again, if it's something that you can deploy stuff, or maybe sometimes not, it really depends. But something that I only found once with Terraform.
I see.
I found it, so it exists. So maybe others.
Yeah, and these
would find
targets
it
are
too, you
very
know?
interesting.
Right,
Like
yeah.
anything built for developers is very interesting, at least from my
Right,
experience.
exactly, yeah.
Because the functionality is very complex. The what happens under the hood often like executes commands, creates clusters.
True,
This is very complex. This is very hard to get right.
true.
And they may not think about the security impact, or maybe you have some kind of separation, so we don't need security because you have your own instance, and then you have a client-side bug,
Right.
which allows to do anything. And
Exactly,
from
yeah.
my these targets are very, very interesting.
That's true.
One other bug class that I saw you report, and I also, well, sometimes I do test for it, but rarely, probably not often enough, is XXE.
Right.
Because this is very specific, I guess. This is not a case where you spam the payloads, because you need like the XML parser to do it.
Mhm.
But do you have some experience of maybe cases where it wasn't so obvious XML is parsed, but you, through some trick, you made it parse the XML?
Not really. When I test for XXE, it's because I saw something XML related.
Yeah.
But what I did have luck with is look at features that people did not think XML was used.
Yeah.
I had one case 2 years ago, I think, where what was it again? I'm trying to remember here. But yeah, you could convert like a doc file or PDF to another file type.
Yeah.
And one of the options was an XLIF file.
What?
Yeah. What? Exactly. It proves the point. So I looked at what is an XLIF file. Yeah. So XLIFF.
Okay.
And by looking into it, it was XML.
Okay.
So I just put like a regular XST payload and it worked.
How did you get to how did you discover a file like this exists?
Well,
type.
I mean, in the options on the UI itself on the application, you could do like a doc, Excel, PowerPoint, regular TXT, HTML, and in the bottom there was XLIF.
Yeah.
So it's like probably people tested for doc and PowerPoint Excel because it's a known technique where you can. Well, it's a XML document in the end that is like compressed or zip, whatever. So people probably tested for that, but have they tested? I mean, they've also probably tested from like HTML to other stuff, but have they tested for XLIF? And you said what? So yeah, exactly. So
I have no idea.
I was like, probably not, you know. So I tested it and it worked. I was the first on it, got a bounty for it, and yeah. So I look for stuff where maybe people will not look or think the XML is used.
Yeah.
I had another case on that same application in regards to sitemap parsing. This is a bit more of a known technique where sitemap is an XML file.
Yeah.
So I had one case like that where you can give it like a remote sitemap file and it'll parse it and then XML, XXE.
Yeah.
Apart from that, like I won't necessarily put like XST payloads blindly. I'm just trying to find functionality or like other XML related specs. I've had luck with that as well, where it's like format that is XML based and you can put an XST in there because it doesn't expect it. I mean, the parser won't expect it, but it'll still parse it in some cases. So yeah.
What do you mean other XML specs? What does it mean?
So like one that I found recently, I'm not sure if I can disclose the spec name. I guess the spec name can be anything.
Yeah.
It's called CXML.
Okay.
I forgot what CXML is. We can look it up real quick. Commerce Extensible Markup Language. This is like one example, but there were others that I found in the past, which it was completely different spec related to I think like translation stuff.
Okay.
And it was like XML based spec. So I just looked at the docs online, see how it worked, and then in the end maybe you can get an XST with that, because in the end it is XML. So maybe the parser in the back end will parse it, even though it doesn't look like. I mean, not that it doesn't look like XXE. It's maybe a feature that others don't think there is XML parsing.
It's not as obvious for
not as obvious. Yeah, exactly.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although now I thought about it, probably spamming the payload once every 100 targets, it will probably work
Maybe,
as well.
yeah, potentially,
Yeah,
yes.
it's crazy how many
Right.
things we probably miss as hunters in general
Right.
for like weird things that happen that you can never guess blindly.
True.
Yeah.
And one thing as well that has happened in the past, well, I mean, recently, is external DTDs don't work, but internal ones do.
What's an internal entity?
Internal DTD, internal document.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot what DTD stands for, document type definition, I think. So internal DTD, so instead of pointing to like your own DTD file, you have to point to an internal one. So I've had a few cases where external were disallowed, but internal ones did work. So you have to test for both.
Yeah, because I guess there's one that's default in Ubuntu or Debian. That's like always there.
Depending on the OS, you'll have always these files available. Yeah.
Yeah, because it sounds pretty. Because the thing is, you don't fetch the DTD from your server. You need to know a local DTD, which sounds like something that's really hard to know with a black box test.
Right.
But there are a few that are in. I guess it was Debian. That is always in the same directory, and you can use the file protocol. It's not like a guesswork. It's
exactly, yeah. And there are. I have a GitHub repo. Not mine, but like I started a GitHub repo that has a bunch of payloads containing. Internal DTDs.
Yeah,
that's pretty interesting. So I usually just use that list, test it out, because in the end you're a black box, right? So you don't know what OS is used in the backend.
Yeah, I think
or not in the backend, but yeah.
I think I remember using this repo once as well for something.
Yeah, so for XXEs, I keep in mind of testing for internal DTDs as well, because I found that not a lot of times, but sometimes, like I said, by default, I think nowadays, by default they disable external DTDs, but maybe forget about internal ones.
Yeah, that's a good one. Good. These are the bugs that were that are painful for me, because I know I miss them because I just don't test for them. I don't know why, but another bug that I do actually test for it, but I want to test more because I see the potential. Secondary path traversal.
Yes.
How is your experience with them?
One of my favorite bugs. I test it on every app that I use. If I see that it's probably happening. It's not something that I found often, but I do like looking for it, and I think it can be like a really impactful bug if you're able to show impact.
Yeah.
It's funny because when I started looking for that, it's roughly the same time around when Sam Curry published his research about it, and I actually DM'd him. Have you seen this before? Because I know this is his type of thing. So he's like, "Oh, I'm actually doing a research on it. I published it like in the week or something." It was like really like around the same time. It's like, "Oh, cool. I'll just look it up." And yeah, like I said, it's common. It's not something that I found too many times, but I think a lot of times it's hard to. It won't be verbose a lot. It'll show that maybe it's happening, maybe not, depending on the error message. And there's lots of guessing work as well needed if it's a bit blind.
Yeah. Do you pass all the path parameters or all the parameters or what?
I go a bit logically.
Okay.
Because some parameters, for example, let's say it's like in the JSON body of a post request, if the parameter is like ID, let's say it's like a digit, then maybe in the backend there will be like a call, let's say API v1/object name, and then the ID.
Yeah.
So maybe this is a good parameter to test.
Yeah.
If it's, let's say, like a parameter that looks more like a metric related, for example, it'll have like your Chrome version, for example, then probably not. I try to go a bit more logically, but I would test every parameter that let's say I'm not sure it's like really specific to the application, and I would test maybe all parameters to check, because you never know, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my approach.
Yeah, because it makes sense to basically test every parameter that can be in the path later. That's what makes sense to test. So most of the time it's going to be IDs, no?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Maybe a type.
Right. And regarding to that, I kind of discovered I wouldn't say new technique, but something related to secondary path traversal with GraphQL. I'm going to talk about it at a future conference, but I think we need to keep in mind that it's not always just like an API. A REST API in the backend could be something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it'll be a fun.
Yeah, the backends can be really, really complex. I wait for the full talk. But yeah, we saw many times that what happens on the backend can be crazy and bugs that we don't expect can happen. So yeah, it's nice. So when you fast for the secondary pass, because I guess for template injection, usually you need like one payload, maybe 2, 3, or for different engines, depending on the technology. For secondary pass traversal, how many payloads do you test? Because I guess you need different depths. You need different iterations of your encoding. So how long is sort of your word list for fuzzing?
I actually rarely fuzz. I kind of do it like manually to see how it reacts.
Okay.
My typical go-to is like traverse back one path and comment out the rest. So I put like a question mark or hashtag.
Yeah.
Both with URL coding, without, depending on what's going on. Because a lot of times, if you're not giving it what it's expecting, it'll give you an error message.
Yeah.
So if you just like comment out the rest of the URL, maybe there are hard-coded parameters that you're not seeing in the code, and then in the error message it'll tell you, oh, you're missing X parameter.
Yeah.
So that way you have an idea that, okay, maybe there is like a secondary path traversal here, or just like the path itself. If by going back one, it may say like, oh, object X or whatever's going on is not there. So it gives you an idea of something is happening in the backend.
Yeah. Now you mentioned actually, because I do use a longer list, but when I test manually, I would start with like going back and going forward.
Right.
Now I think actually you say it, maybe putting in a question mark is more likely to give us a useful error rather than anything else.
So a question mark, maybe the full URL is like your input, then other path in the end, right?
Yeah.
So if you put a question mark, it'll remove everything else.
Yeah.
So it'll give an error message indicating what is happening. Well, if you just put like like let's say // or whatever, without removing the rest, it'll just say maybe like not found.
Yeah.
Compared to if you put a question mark, it may be more verbose. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And also, if there is some kind of filter for the // which I think is rare, but probably can happen, you're not gonna have problems with this.
True.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, especially if the input is in the body, obviously it depends on the WAF. Let's say Akamai is really annoying with //
Yeah.
But usually like you can get away with it just with the regular.
Yeah, if it's a body, it's not a problem.
But sometimes you need to encode it. Really depends on the context of the application.
Yeah. So we mentioned GraphQL. I know the research is coming later, but in general, what's your methodology for testing GraphQL? I guess you start by checking if the introspection is enabled.
Yes, that's usually my first thing that I do. I find that it's disabled most of the time. Unfortunately. So what I do typically first is try to find the queries themselves in the JavaScript files. A lot of times they'll be there. I just look for like query space.
It's easy to grab for.
Exactly. Or just like the operations name and try to find those queries or mutations that way. And let's say I do have a query, a valid query, and it works. I try to add more parameters to it, see if I can get those in the response or disclose more information that I should not be able to access. Secondary path traversal is also one that I've had success with in GraphQL queries or mutations.
Okay. So you would use the // or whatever other character
in like a GraphQL variable
as the variable. Okay.
Yeah. Typical stuff like DOS, like known GraphQL techniques, GraphQL hacking techniques.
Yeah. How successful are you with reporting the denial of service bugs when they are mentioned as out of scope?
Not successful because everybody probably tests for it.
Yeah.
I actually started like not testing for it because I found that an impact is not always there either, because a lot of times it'll just like DOS, the GraphQL service, everything else works, and then I mean sometimes the impact's there, sometimes not, depends on the application. But I just started looking for other stuff. Yeah,
and also if you're testing the target, which you showed the write-up from recently, which has separate instances, sometimes you can only DOS if it's a post authentication. Sometimes you can only DOS your own instance.
exactly.
If that's a DOS and you have to be a user of the organization which you're DOSing, the impact is really low.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I had this case recently. I reported the denial of service because the response time was really long. And turned out that I could, even though my instance was having a long response time, the other instance was unaffected. So even though it was like a very similar case to what you described, like the domain was similar, so I assumed some resources are shared as well. It still was separated enough that the DOS just didn't affect other users, so it was pretty useless.
One thing as well I just remembered that I test for, a lot of times the query implementation will be in the body of the request, but if you put it as a GET request, sometimes it'll work. So that can help in terms of like CSRF or whatnot. Sometimes it works.
And usually if it works, it also allows mutations, doesn't it?
I don't know. Maybe I haven't. I think last time that I found it was only queries. No, it was mutation because I reported as a CSR, so it did an action.
I thought about the question and I realized it doesn't really make sense. How about OAuth? On the Critical Thinking podcast, you mentioned a very interesting bug in DOM Purify.
Right.
Can you please remind us or tell the viewers that didn't listen what was the bug?
Yeah, sure. So it was a case where DOM Purify was used along with, obviously Chrome. And DOM Purify did block the meta tag, but for some reason it still existed in the DOM, I guess, in Chrome. So the bug itself was I was able to leak an OAuth token by putting the meta tag, which what was it? The refer policy, so that the token would be sent through I think an image. I think I put an image tag as my HTML injection payload. So that way the cookies would be sent to the URL along with the token. And from what I heard recently, just last month, that technique still works. So it still applies probably today. I guess Chrome or DOM Purify haven't not fixed it. So
because the bug is that when your HTML on the client side is being parsed, maybe you have a very restrictive list of allowed tags, and usually meta tag will not be allowed.
Usually, yeah.
But still, after parsing it is applied to the website. So even though DOM Purify, the HTML that it returns strips it, it's still in the website.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very cool bug.
I stumbled on it like a bit by chance. I was literally just trying any payloads. Thought of meta tag because it did apply to my scenario.
Yeah.
And I later learned through critical thinking of how to look for the allow listed tags in DOM Purify. So I did not do that last time, which was really just like trying some stuff.
Yeah.
And like I said, it ended up working and still works to this day. So even if DOM Purify blocks it, it still for some reason applies in the DOM. So
So if you have DOM Purify on the client side, and you have something sensitive you can put in the URL, use this because it still works. So it's a very interesting bug. I'm trying to think if I have some target using it.
Maybe because DOM Purify is used, I feel a lot more than it used to be like just 2-3 years ago. I feel like now it's everywhere.
Yeah, I think it became the standard.
I think so, yes.
Which we should be happy about at the end of the day. We want them to be secure, but as bug hunters, we're not, which means they do a good job of,
exactly.
of being hard to bypass.
That's true.
Speaking of OAuth, so if we have this bug which allows us to leak the URL, but for this to to be a valid attack, we should put an unused code in the URL.
Right.
So what are some methods we can do it with?
So when I test for OAuth, I find like so many attack scenarios and techniques. So I usually just like open up Franz Rosen's like Dirty Dancing article, which is great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Just try to think of like, okay, I should maybe try this and that. I also look at I think there's a guide for OWASP hacking, like created from OWASP, I believe. Sorry, OAuth hacking guide. Yeah. So look at that for like ideas. But a lot of time I just look for the basic stuff like, can I send the code to an attacker own server to do a direct URI parameter? Is the state validated? What else? What am I missing in terms of the basic regular stuff? Yeah.
I remember after the article from France, I started testing it on every flow.
Right.
But I got to a point where usually it's if there's the old flow, it's fairly easy to break it and to land with the code on the page. The harder part is to leak the URL.
Yes.
Yeah. So usually it means needing an XXS, or the bug you mentioned, or the one he described was some kind of XSS, but on a sandbox domain, but it's allowed to leak the URL, but it's usually quite difficult to do, unfortunately.
Yes, yeah. And then, like I said, so you need an XSS, but you already had an XSS, so you don't always need to exploit that part to do something bad. So yeah.
You can probably use it as a gadget to show the impact of your XSS if you cannot address it, change the email or stuff like this.
Yes. Actually, it reminded me of something. One thing that did work recently is something that DOM published recently.
Yeah.
And I think also Justin spoke about it in Critical Thinking. I think they called it client application confusion.
I know.
Client ID confusion, something like that.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I pulled it up here. I remembered I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, the blog post from Diansic about OAuth is very good.
Yeah, I actually don't. So you can create like your own. I mean, if you can, depending on the context, use like different client IDs. Sometimes they won't validate the client ID, but once it's time for the application to validate the token, it'll notice that it's not for the client, and so the token will not be consumed. So you can try to steal it in another way or not. But there are ways by manipulating the client ID where you can get access to the token, or lots of testing to be done with OAuth.
And also, I remember one bug, and I sort of tracked the origin of why it was possible, because it was possible to use like my client to authenticate to somebody's instance.
Right. Yeah.
It was using Cognito.
Okay.
And I tracked back that in the AWS documentation there was, or still is, I haven't checked, a code snippet to validate the token in that case. And this code did not have, because basically what you need to do in that case is to validate the issuer, if it's the one you're trying to authenticate user against. And basically the code in the docs didn't have this validation of the issuer, but the docs said, this code does not have the validation of the issuer, but for the production code, you should do it yourself.
Oh, really?
but of course, the developer would copy the code and use it as is. So it worked like this. I think they did fix this part in the documentation, but it was very kind.
Yes. I also remember one OAuth bug from a show and tell. I forgot who it was recently. I remember because I was mad seeing that because it's something that I had tested for. In the OAuth flow, the application, there were like custom parameters that were added in the OAuth flow.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's probably just like metric stuff, like for them to know like who connected from where. Turns out that by manipulating those parameters, you could just put any redirect URI and the token will be redirected over there. So since the custom parameter had like arbitrary data, it like did a dirty dancing and messed up everything.
Yeah.
It was one case where I was like, oh, I should have thought about that,
Wait, so another parameter was used as the redirect URI?
No, I mean, like another parameter was part of the OAuth flow.
Yeah.
It contained like, I forgot what it was. But just like something that not necessarily part of like the OAuth spec and the regular OAuth flow, like just like an arbitrary parameter specific to the application.
Yeah, I see.
And by manipulating it, you could put in any value as your direct URI parameter. So you can redirect it. You could redirect the code anywhere.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I always love to see the custom parameters, or when the state is like a JSON and contains something like this. It's
true.
I love to see
but
this.
When there's like the PKCE thing with the challenge, if you just remove those parameters, sometimes it works.
Yeah. How successful have you been recently with like the typical of redirect URI takeovers where the redirect URI just isn't validated properly?
It's been a while. I think the last one was through like a path traversal in the redirect URI.
Yeah.
So it stays on the same application and same origin, but you need an XXS or something, or like a HTML injection with the meta tag, whatever. Another technique to leak
or a
the
redirect.
token. Or the redirect, but it's been a while. I found like I think a few last year, but I don't think I found one yet in 2025 in regards to OAuth. So
it's
I think programs are starting to configure it a bit more properly, but I think there's always some weird bugs laying around in OAuth. So
of course, you have some hidden parameters.
Yeah.
It leads to that are just forgotten and the validation is not there. I suppose you know what bug I have.
Actually, it reminds me of one bug actually, and it's quite interesting. In part of the OAuth flow, like I manipulated the scope part, and I added myself a privilege that I usually did not have.
Yeah.
And in the end, it was redirected to an arbitrary host that I did not even know existed. Yeah.
Because of a different scope.
Right. And it gave me like, you're not allowed to access that permission.
Yeah.
But the token was sent in the URL and the other host. So I just like found another XSS on that other host and then was able to leak the token in the OAuth flow.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that one was weird.
Yeah.
Because why would it redirect to a completely different host? Like, doesn't make sense.
What was the other host? Was it like a, I don't know,
it was like
some
kind of SSO server, it was not used. It was like used for another product.
Yeah,
completely. Yeah,
that's cool.
It's like usually it was like in the login or like some kind of SSO, but usually like in the login application.
Yeah,
but that one was sent to a completely different one, which was not even used as like OAuth for my application.
Yeah, I see. Do you often test for, let's say, lower severity OAuth-related bugs where, for example, when you go through the authentication flow with some restricted set of scopes, and then you want to redo the authentication flow, but with more scopes, it should reprompt the user to confirm the new scopes. So if there's no reconfirmation, it's like a lower medium level bug. There are a few different ones as well. I know Johan is sometimes looking for bugs like this. Do you also spend time on this, or because of your resolution to look for highs and crits, you ignore this?
Yeah, not really. Maybe I should. Maybe it could lead to like more bugs and more interesting bugs that can maybe chain with other stuff. But I usually just try to leak the code somehow. Because it directly leads to ATO, right? So, which is my goal for OAuth.
Yeah, for highs and crits. That's the only goal.
Yeah.
Because the other, I have started recently to hunt, because I hunted on the target that paid really well for mediums. So I also hunted for these attack scenarios that are a little bit more difficult to exploit, because the attack scenario is like the app is the attacker. Mm-hmm. So it has more privileges than it should, and it's clearly a bug.
Right.
But the attack scenario is not there. But on a good target that pays like for this target paid up to 1,000 lows and up to 8,000 mediums.
Okay, that's worth it.
That's worth it. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think there's a lot of bugs like this, but it's quite difficult to test, or it's a bit annoying. Yeah. But sometimes it is worth it. Okay, last question, because you said that you're more like a deep dive guy, more like a manual hacker, but you did build some automation.
Yeah.
So what does the automation do?
It's pretty, I wouldn't say simple. Like I don't do like any nuclei hacking or scanning, because I feel like everybody's already doing it. So it would be a waste of resources and time to do it. So I have put like an infrastructure in place where I get alerted when a new app has been put online on internet.
From the DNS sources.
Yeah, DNS. Yeah. So sometimes it resolves. Actually, a lot of time it doesn't resolve, but at least I know it's there.
Yeah.
And I put like a bot in place that would constantly test the resolution. Let me start again. So I have a tool in place where it alerts me of new assets, whether they're on internet or not. Sometimes it resolves, sometimes it doesn't. If it does resolve, I'll do like HTTPX on it, see if HTTP is running. If it doesn't, just like store it in the file, and then the bot that I built will constantly do resolution. Well, I mean, constantly. Once I think every week that I did it, to see if it does resolve, and if it does, then do HTTPS.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you somehow note all the domains that resolve to internal IP addresses to like use it later for SSRFs?
I do store it.
Yeah.
But I don't go back to it much. I go back to it when I do need it for SSRF.
Okay. Yeah. Because I thought it's useful to, let's say we have loads of IP addresses resolved from a wildcard domain, let's say. It's useful to just save all the internal ones.
Yeah.
And once you have the SSRF, that's the ones that you use.
Exactly.
So that's what you do.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I thought about it, but I didn't do it.
Yeah, I think in the end, it's like I kind of changed my technique a bit.
Yeah.
So I used to just like open burp, hack, and that's it. Now I've been like gathering a bit more data, taking a lot more notes. My notes are a lot more structured.
Oh.
And I do note like internal domains and take note of everything that I see that can lead to a bug. So I think I probably missed some bugs in the past where I was like, oh, I remember that, but where was it? I don't know. But by taking notes, sometimes it's easier to go back.
How do you organize the notes?
I have like let's say a hack on one application, because I'm a deep dive, so I don't really do recon, or not much anyway. I had like technologies used, so like my recon in terms of hacking on an app, I like not like subdomain scanning, just like recon on the application itself. So I'll note technologies used. I'll note the API endpoints, the reverse proxy API. Sometimes like slash, I don't know, water will have a different backend than another one, so I know like which one leads to another backend. Sometimes like slash water will have like a Node.js app, but slash glass will have a Java app. So I take note all of this. Take note of GraphQL endpoints, things that I notice that are like interesting or weird. Sometimes just something as simple as like a metrics, like slash metrics endpoints are pretty useless usually. If you report them, it's a little bit like informative, but it can help in other stuff. So I take note of that. I take note of like lows and mediums that I will not report, but can be changed with something else. I take note of what I see is interesting and what to test. Kind of like a bit of threat modeling, like, okay, this app has this, like a bit of logic behind like what to test. Actually could probably take a look here. I think I'm forgetting something.
So things you save for later. So internal domains, obviously lows, mediums, and that you can potentially change with something.
Yes.
What else are like the typical things you sort of save for later? And
stuff that I find that are probably vulnerable but have a hard time exploiting.
Okay.
Or that they disclose information which can probably help in another place. For example, I had one case where when I uploaded a file, for some reason, once in a while, it said, "Oh, cannot find file in this path." This was the internal path.
Okay, yeah.
So I could know where it was being uploaded, and maybe I could do like a traversal and upload it elsewhere or whatnot. So information like that.
Yeah.
I also store custom headers. I've had luck recently with like custom headers that the companies use.
Success in what sense? In the sense of putting one header in a different request that normally did not have that header?
Yeah, sometimes
Okay,
yes.
okay.
I saw different behavior. And one trick as well that I think Franz, obviously Franz knows everything, right?
Yeah.
It's looking at the access control allowed headers, I think, in the
Yeah.
response.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have like custom headers in there, and putting them in the requests will have an interesting behavior. So I had a few cases like that, which like, interesting. I was not always able to exploit it, but like I know something is happening. They're doing something with that header.
With access, well, I didn't get this part.
I mean, the headers that are disclosed in the access control allowed headers,
Yeah.
sometimes you have like a bunch of them. So if you put like one by one or all of them in your request and put like any value, sometimes
Okay.
the application will reply like with something interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see. That's interesting.
And also cases where the app used like custom headers for admins, and by putting like that header in the request and putting like let's say it was like a x-user ID in the request, I could put another ID. It got me access to another users. Yeah, stuff like that. Like,
yeah, that's cool.
Stuff that should not work but works.
After speaking of things that should not work but they work or they worked, after the recent Next.js bug,
Oh yeah,
I'm tempted to just take a look at the source code of each web framework, just the grep for all the headers that
I thought about
processed.
that too. Yeah, I actually thought about it too.
Yeah, because
I'm sure something weird happens.
There must be something else.
Yeah.
There must be something else.
It's not the first time that guy in particular has found Next.js bugs specific to headers. I think he had found 2 or 3 regarding to cache poisoning.
Yeah.
And now an authorization bypass with headers, and I think I found a few too where it led to some interesting stuff. So I think headers are definitely an interesting attack surface.
Yeah, for sure. We'll end our interview here, but before we do, tell me what are your plans for 2025, as this is your first full year as a full-time bug bounty hunter. What are your goals for this year?
I have my financial goals into the bug bounty. I'm on pace to pass that. I think by a lot if I can continue hacking and finding more bugs.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get invited to a few more life hacking events, because those usually like boost a bit. And hoping to take more vacation as well. I'm actually going on vacation in a couple of weeks, so I'm hoping to be able to schedule some more later this summer, maybe in the fall as well. We'll see. Just have fun, play more golf, play more hockey, and have fun doing bounty full time, or part time, but like full time.
Part time with full time.
Yeah.
Awesome. I wish you a lot of good luck with this, and thanks you so much for the interview.
Thanks for having me.